Welcome back to the Sports Authority. Richard Skinner joining me once again. We're going to talk some guys, which is always the favorite part of Hard Knocks, is to see who's going to be on the roster, who's going to win a starting spot. Your first position battle to watch is along the offensive line. I think a lot of people want to see complete, competition along the line after how they played last year, but the right guard spot for you.
Yeah, and obviously center could fall into play depending on the Trey Hopkins situation, but we'll go there because right tackle's Riley Reif, left tackle's Jonah Williams, left guard fully seems to be Quentin Spain. There could, if he doesn't play well, there could be some competition there. But right guard is Jackson Carman, Xavier Su'a-Filo, Michael Jordan. Which one of those three wins the job? I know the hope and belief is it's Jackson Carman. You drafted in the second round as a future tackle, but the hope to play guard this year. I think there's two ways to look at this. If he doesn't win the job, maybe it's because he didn't play well. Maybe it's also because Michael Jordan finally tapped into the potential they believed in. Maybe Xavier Su'a-Filo is just that veteran guy that, hey, he does everything right. He's never going to be great, but he's going to be solid to begin with. We'll ease Jackson in there. So I think there's going to be a lot to read into it because I think everybody thinks, boy, if Jackson doesn't win the job, he must be a failure. Maybe not, but maybe not. And maybe he becomes then that swing tackle spot, because Akeem Adeniji, we don't know where he stands. He's on one of those early physically unable to perform lists. Remember the early conversation in OTAs was he's going to be out maybe the whole season with that pec injury. You got Fred Johnson, you got Dante Smith, who you drafted, but you're going to probably need somebody else to be in that mix as a swing tackle. Maybe that's the role Jackson fits. So I think there's a lot of things to watch at that right guard, and the big part is how quickly do they settle in? If they settle in by the preseason opener, is that the guy you want moving forward? Do you want to give every guy, you get a start here, you get a start here, you get a start here? Let's see how you guys do in live action. So that to me is one of the most interesting ones because let's face it, got to protect Joe Burrow, right?
Do you think all three are on the roster?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think so. In fact, if you want to look, I did do a 53-player roster projection at local12.com. It's up right now. I did have all of them. Michael's the most interesting because he was kind of a Jim Turner favorite. They kept giving him the job. He lost the job a couple of times. Xavier's just a solid journeyman vet. He's probably never going to be great, but he's never going to be awful. And obviously, you're not going to cut your second-round draft pick unless he's an utter disaster.
Let's put it this way: if they do, we got bigger issues.
It comes in 7. Now, they did cut Freddy Childress many moons ago. People may remember him from the early 80s. He was a second-round pick guard, came in and couldn't weighed about 397 pounds and couldn't run a lick. Unless Jackson comes in like that, which guys today with the money involved are not going to do that. So I think all three make the roster.
On the opposite end, your second position to watch is the defensive line, not just one specific position, but so many guys, and they brought in so many guys through the draft. It's really up in the air to who's going to be in what position and how much.
Yeah, I think you got your four starters. You got Trey Hendrickson at an end, you've got Sam Hubbard at an end, and you got Ogunjobi and DJ Reader as your tackles. But then after that, you got Mike Daniels back for another year. And I've got Mike making the roster. Mike's a vet. Maybe there's not a lot left in the tank. I think there's enough as a rotational guy. He had to start a bunch of games last year by default. Tyler Shelvin, we talked about the rookie. I can't imagine he doesn't make it. But then who becomes that kind of fifth tackle? Josh Tupou, don't forget, didn't play last year. He opted out due to COVID-19. He played all 16 games in 2019 and got 7 starts. Became a pretty effective rotational tackle. That's a nice piece to add. At the ends, you got all those rookies. You got Cam Sample. You got Joseph Osai. You got to imagine both those guys make it. But remember, last year they drafted Khalid Kareem. Amani Bledsoe started 4 games last year. So you got a lot of guys in that mix for the backup end spots. So there's a lot of guys that played a bunch last year, some by default. Obviously, some new blood with the draft picks. There's a lot to sort out in those backup roles.
Nick Saban once told us when I worked in Birmingham after a game when we asked him why so many young guys on the defensive line got playing time. He said because receivers and running backs, they run out of gas, they get it right back. Those big boys run out, it's not getting in for another week or so. So I think the depth, no matter how many guys are playing, the depth is a good thing for this team.
No, I think that's the most important depth part a lot of times that people, you assume everybody plays every snap. And along those defensive lines, you don't, especially with sub-packages. We mentioned, if you got a sub-package of Trey Hendrickson and maybe Joseph Osai shows you something, Sam Hubbard kicks down inside and maybe matches with Larry Ogunjobi as the nickel pass rusher. So there's a lot of mixing and matching to do across that defensive front. It's not just the 4 guys that start.
And the final position battle, the one that everybody is really interested in. I mean, this is the one I'm going to be watching every time I'm there at practice.
It's the one you're going to get most questions about.
It's the one we're going to get the most questions about. It's the kickers.
It is. I mean, a few years ago when it was Jake Elliott versus Randy Bullock, people were losing their mind every day when we all would either report or tweet out how the guys did in kicking practice. And literally, we would have to, as a group, stand behind the goalpost because they don't tell you if they're good or bad. You have to go see them for yourself, what hash mark they're kicking off of, how's it going. Randy Bullock won the job. People to this day still hate it, and Randy was actually a pretty good kicker for a period of time. He lost the job last year to the guy who's going to battle Austin Seibert and the guy they drafted, Evan McPherson. Let's not forget, they drafted McPherson a round earlier than probably most projected because they wanted him. He was great in college, 51 of 60 field goals made at Florida. His past year, 4 of 7. They did an individual workout with him before the draft. He booted a 62-yarder, and some of those are under controlled conditions and all that stuff. I do think McPherson goes in with a leg up, I guess pun intended there. He would have to probably be far worse than Austin Seibert. Austin Seibert really in the 2 years he's kicked in this league, first with Cleveland, then with the Bengals, has not been much special. He's not been dreadful. He just hasn't been very special. So unless somehow Evan McPherson is a flaming train wreck, not only would Austin Seibert have to outkick him when literally you're putting the math on paper going, he made 7 of 9 today, he made 8 of 9 today, let's see where the numbers go, and that's what they did with the Elliott-Bullock matchup. I think that Seibert would have to be significantly better than McPherson to win the job. So I think it's McPherson's job to lose.
With how things are with COVID, do you think the loser of that battle is still going to be on the practice squad? Do they carry that extra guy just in case?
Yeah, I don't know the eligibility standpoint for Seibert. McPherson obviously would have some as a rookie. I don't think Austin would, and I usually actually get a list of that. So that's a good question. I think they will eventually put somebody there as a practice squad candidate, and it might be him, it might be somebody else. Remember last year, everybody was losing their mind. They put Seibert technically on the active roster just in case something happened during the season for COVID. I do think you have to have that. I think you'll see that with a third quarterback, obviously, on the practice squad, the chance to move that guy up and down. So, yeah, I think they will have at least somebody just in case, because you can't have a Thursday guy come down with it or a Friday and not be able to elevate somebody over the weekend to go kick.
If you want to read all of his analysis on the Bengals throughout training camp, you go to local12.com/sports. He's Richard Skinner. Skinny, it's all just getting started.
It is.